Earlier in the season, you'll remember Man United beat Liverpool 2-1 at Old Trafford, and it really was a shock result because obviously Man United had struggled in the first couple of games. We thought it was a bit more of the same. Ten Hag wasn't able to kind of get his claws into it and mould anything, but in that game, there was one hell of a performance, and we were also quite surprised by Liverpool. It was the sort of third game, I think, in a poor start that ended to a poor middle, and we're now getting towards the sort of quite possibly a poor end of what's been a really frustrating season for them. They will look to this game and try and allow that to be the next opportunity for recovery in terms of what's been a really odd season. I guess first thoughts on Liverpool in the season so far. Have you sort of acclimatised to this new Liverpool? Because I'm hearing that a lot, the old Liverpool and the new Liverpool. They don't seem the same, and they've kept trying to sort of recover, but it hasn't happened yet, has it?
It's reminded me a lot of that lockdown season where they struggled for a while, but they ended up finishing in the top four. I think they might have even finished third in the end. I've the whole time been thinking they'll come back at some point and they'll do that again and end up finishing in the top four. They still might, but they just don't look the same beast at all. They all look drained. They all look devoid of energy. You know, there's certain players in that team now. The midfield suddenly looks very old, and it hasn't done previously. And you think of the way Klopp teams play, your midfield can't afford to be like that. Defensively, you know, they don't look great. Van Dijk hasn't even been up to the same standard that he has been since he went there. Trent Alexander-Arnold's output in terms of goals and assists is nowhere near what it's been in previous years. So I feel like everyone's kind of fallen off the cliff at the same time. Fabinho, I've seen him live a couple of times this season. I've watched him on TV a lot this season as well. Just absolutely nowhere near the player that he was. Looks like he's running through treacle at times. So for Liverpool, it just feels like at the same time a lot of players have kind of lost their mojo. They're also trying to integrate a new front three and change the way that their front three is lined up. You know, Gakpo and Nunez may turn into be excellent signings for Liverpool, but there's going to be a period of adjustment, and I feel sorry for them because they've come into a team that isn't doing the things well that they've done well for 5-6 years. So all round, it's just been a really, really tough season for Liverpool. And you know, the Real Madrid game, they just looked miles off them, didn't they, in that second half?
It's funny that though, isn't it? They were 2-0 up.
Yeah.
It was a great 10 minutes.
They fell away due to. I thought there was a strong whiff of genius from Real Madrid in terms of what they were able to do for Benzema to come back and I think maybe he was rested for the game before, but the sort of clutchness of them, their ability to go 2-0 down and a horrific mistake in that at Anfield and sort of keep calm and carry on, I thought was pretty impressive. But do you think then, when we're looking at this game against Man United and how well they've done, and we will talk about how brilliant Man United have become, one of the areas where Man United have been brilliant has been their midfield. We've done a video on Casemiro, so go check that one out, talking about how amazing he's been. Is that where the frailties start for Liverpool? And is there any way of solving that Liverpool midfield this season?
It was an interesting one. I don't want to offend any of the Liverpool players or Liverpool fans when I say this, because obviously they've won a lot of trophies during the successful period they've just had with Jurgen Klopp. What I'm saying is that success wasn't about the midfield. It was about the front three, who were unbelievable, who basically the team gave a platform to go and play. And Salah was tearing things up, and Sadio Mane,
to be fair, I think what you're saying as well, Hugh, is that with the ball it was about the front three. More so without the ball, it was about that midfield.
Yeah, exactly. So with the ball, so when you're attacking teams, when you're hurting teams, that's what I meant. It was about those players, right? And of course the fullbacks as well, with all the ridiculous assist records that Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold were breaking, right? So you had those five players as essentially the ones who were attacking the most. There wasn't we weren't sitting there going, oh, this midfielder from Liverpool's always chipping in with a goal or an assist. There wasn't a clear number 10. It was always we'll give them a platform to play. And you had the likes of Wijnaldum, who I think was underrated in a Liverpool shirt. Who would go out there, do his job every week, wasn't about the headlines. They never really had a player in midfield, and now you get them talking about we need to sign Jude Bellingham, or you get a Harvey Elliott, who now is well, I can get forward and I can get goals and I can get assists and I can be that extra player. Because actually, when you think about the times that they tried to play with the front four, it hasn't clicked for Liverpool. They had brought in Diogo Jota, obviously, and they played quite a few games where it was about the front four players. Yeah. And it never really clicked for them because they almost left the extra pressure on two midfielders. It was if these five players are going to be the ones hurling themselves forward, we need to be more. All the other players basically need to be more reserved, right? The 2 centre backs, the 3 central midfielders are going to be our defensive core, and actually I think the transition period where they've tried to change that and have more influence from midfield has meant that that's created a pressure on the other central midfielders. Fabinho's form has fallen. But then you have Thiago in that midfield, who obviously wasn't during that successful period. He wants to play. He wants to dictate the game. He wants to be a midfield player who is a star. And he is a certified, bona fide star in world football in terms of what we see from him. Just a magnificent player throughout his career. But he hasn't yet translated that into a Liverpool shirt because essentially you've changed the dynamic totally. Now you've got a new front 3. Another dynamic has changed. Can these players do what Mane and Salah and Firmino were doing? Is it this? We don't even know the answer to that yet. I feel sorry for them. I agree with you because they've come into a new league. I mean, it's not. That's the other thing. They've come into a new league. They're expected to deliver at the very highest level of world football, basically, which is to take a Liverpool team towards success and trophy. So much is changing right now, and so many players have got injured, fallen in form. You mentioned the likes of Virgil van Dijk. I am sitting here, a Manchester United fan who feels so sorry for what Liverpool are currently going through because it's been just a thunderstorm, if you like. Everything that can go wrong has gone wrong.
The QPR fan and the Aston Villa fan have got slightly less sympathy for you. Won everything, guys. Don't worry about it.
You know what I think's massive is that Liverpool, I feel like, and look, I'll caveat this by saying the way Liverpool have operated in the transfer market the last few years has been outstanding. They've done some excellent work.
It kind of could still be, couldn't it?
I do think Nunez will turn into a good player, but it's almost like they've kind of become fascinated with the fact that the front 3 was all approaching their 30s at the same time and freshening that up. So they've signed a couple of players to come in and play there. But they've almost forgotten to do the same thing with the midfield. Right. So Fabinho, Henderson, Milner, I love James Milner. Excellent footballer. But at his age now, he's playing too much for Liverpool. He shouldn't be needed to be utilised as much as he is. It's almost as if Henderson should have fell into that Milner role, but he hasn't. Henderson's still having to play an awful lot of games, and it's almost like Liverpool just forgot to freshen up that midfield and concentrate on the front 3. But it was that midfield that gave the platform to that front 3, and off the ball is where Liverpool struggle. They're still in the goals. They've kept a bit, albeit they've kept a couple of clean sheets as well in the last couple of games. But in the main this season, the goals haven't been a problem, but they're letting in too many, and that comes from the midfield, in my opinion.
I agree. I think it's one that by being able to press, and you talk about, that's what I meant when I thought that point was important, was the Henderson and Wijnaldum in particular, they were able to stop the ball from coming out, and if that's how Klopp wants to play. And that's why I think, I see this as a positive, but it's going to sound like a negative. The part of the problems are down to injuries. I think do play a huge part in that because the more weapons you've got, the more options you've got, of course, especially with 5 substitutes. But I also think there's a bit of not pressure, but responsibility has to be on Klopp in terms of his vision moving forward. But the great thing is he's got so much credit in the bank. I always talk about you either back the man or you address the circumstances. And people sometimes, if it gets grave enough, you've got to make a change. I think here you obviously back the man, but I think that then leads to a lot of confusion amongst Liverpool fans because they're actually, any other club you'd be going, well, hang on, manager, what are you doing? But because it's Jurgen Klopp and he has so much credit in the back, rightly so, I think you're just going, well, will this fit? Will this fit? Will this fit? Will this work? Will this fit? And it's just not happening right now. And I think that Man United and most teams will be able to cut through them a little bit more and leave it to those 2 at the back. If those 2 at the back, I think, are Konate and Virgil van Dijk, is one where I think those 2 are good enough to bend but not break. But when it's been other centre-backs, I think that, alongside Fabinho, makes it very difficult for them to win games.
I just think there is the question for Jurgen Klopp, if you like, is, do I take this group of players and stick to my philosophy and try and mould them, lots of young players, try and mould them into the players that I want for the style that I want to play? Or do I sit and say, this is the squad, these are the players that I have, this is what they do well, how do I create a style of football that suits them? And I think most of the top level managers will say, what's worked for me and what's got me here is my philosophy of football. And that means if you're going to play the style of football that Jurgen Klopp wants, it's going to take time.
Yeah. For
me, this is a team that is just, I don't even want to say transition. Like they're starting again, really. They're starting again.
I think there are some strengths in there, though. And if you think, and I think he's kind of doing it the press element of it is the interesting bit for me, because I don't think what you're doing with Bajcetic is you've got someone who's got more legs than Thiago, but isn't as an attacking player as Wijnaldum. So you can't go back to that cookie cutter of what you had previously. So he wants to have Nunez, who I think's been far better on that left-hand side. Gakpo dropping deep to doing a bit of sort of hybrid Firmino, but he could also be a 10 to deal with that.
He's a cross between Firmino and Jota, isn't he?
Yeah,
Gakpo,
he is,
yeah.
and I think he's got real quality, and so I can see that front three clicking. But it's the spaces in between that I think Klopp needs to deal with. And I think you're right. I think he needs to get to between now and the end of the season, see if he can sneak in the top 4. And then he needs to make a clear decision. Are you going to go down the road that he's done previously, which is Ralph Rangnick, where he used to always say, think about how you want to play first and then figure out your players after that? Or do you do what Ancelotti does and goes, okay, these are my players, and creates this beautiful statue that he seems to do every time? That doesn't feel like Klopp to me. So I think there's going to be a lot of change in the summer. We said we talk about Man United, we're going to talk about them now. They are in great form. Ten Hag's, I mean, every decision he makes turns to gold here. Rashford is flying. I think we've spoken a lot about Rashford, and I think he could obviously play a huge part in this game. I'm intrigued to get your thoughts on those changes that Man United can make, because that's where Ten Hag has just been so brilliant recently. Both in the right back position, because I think there's a debate in terms of who's going to start, but also Garnacho, who got the winner against West Ham and is going from strength to strength. Do you see either of those playing or coming on and changing the game? How do you see that panning out?
I think it'll be the same team as the cup final. I think he went with what he perceived to be his strongest 11 at the time in the cup final, and I think he'll do the same against Liverpool. I think Dalot has been magnificent all season, but I don't think anyone could have foreseen that Wan-Bissaka would play himself back in the way he has. It felt like Ten Hag wasn't a fan of him. He came in because they didn't have anyone else, essentially. But what he's done is he's proven the manager wrong. He's worked himself hard and he's proven the manager wrong and shown that he can be the valid competition to Dalot now.
Who's got... Is it one where you concern yourself with Darwin Nunez, who's most likely to play on the left-hand side, and have Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who's a great one-on-one defender, or do you go and put it on them a little bit with the
Dalot got booked. I think he was up against San Maximan in the final of the Carabao Cup. So it's not exactly the same, because we know the kind of quick feet and the dribbling ability that San Maximan has. But ultimately, it was about the one-on-one contest. He had to bring Wan-Bissaka on, because he was like, we can't risk a red card in the final, and it's the thing that's most likely to happen. In terms of Newcastle's attack, that was the key area. If they could get San Maximan one-on-one with Dalot, they were going to have joy in that area. Wan-Bissaka comes on and he just shuts it down, basically, especially in the one-on-one, because that's where he thrives, as we know. The interesting thing is, I think the pace of Darwin Nunez is key to what he can do, and he can burn both of them, to be perfectly honest. I don't think the manager will sit there and say, we have to play Wan-Bissaka because he's got the pace. He's probably quicker than Dalot, and he maybe will get the start for that reason, particularly with it being away from home, and maybe Man United will go with a slightly more pragmatic approach, maybe a little bit more cautious in terms of their thinking. And so Wan-Bissaka maybe will start for that reason, but Nunez has the ability to stretch the game, doesn't matter who he goes up against, and that would be still for me a key area of concern.
I think Dalot will play because purely on the basis that I think an underrated facet of his game is his back post defending, so getting himself in the right place at the right time when a cross comes in, and we know how good Nunez is in the air. I think where Wan-Bissaka's let himself down in the past is that concentration in games where he's not with his man, he lets his man get away from him and they pop up at the back post and they score a goal. So I think Dalot, Wan-Bissaka, look, defensively is superb in certain facets, but I think that key facet there for Dalot, I think that's why he'll get the start. But it's great for them that they've got options, because the Manchester United team over the last 12 to 18 months, 2 years, has picked itself now that they've started to get options.
Yeah.
There is also, by the way, that positional competition, if you like, reversed with Rashford up against Trent Alexander-Arnold, and I think that could be, in terms of Manchester United's success, a key area, the way that Rashford's playing at the moment, the defensive frailties, if you like, the perceived defensive frailties of Trent Alexander-Arnold. As soon as you mentioned the ball hung up at the back post, I'm thinking, we can hang the ball up for Rashford. We could do that. We got Wout Weghorst. You stick him on Trent. That could be an area, vice versa.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and actually for both as well, I think Varane and Konate, or Matip, I guess, I think for those two, because of those players vacating the space and looking to get them in quickly, could be a key area as well.
You can't play Matip. If Konaté is fit, you're playing, because Rashford in between Trent and in between Matip is asking for trouble the way that they've been playing this season. So if Konaté's even 70-80% fit, I think he plays, because he's got the physical presence and he's got the recovery pace to kind of deal with that better than Matip. You're asking for problems if you're Liverpool and you line up in that way.
Super quick predictions. I'll go first. I think Liverpool. I think 1-1 actually. I think this is a 1-0. I think they might it might be it's normally a bad game, isn't it? I think it'll be 1-0. Yeah, I'm going to give it that.
I mean, I'd say 2-2, but what I would say is there is big pressure on Liverpool in terms of this fixture, because a defeat in terms of that top four would be like a dagger at the moment. So they have to utilise Anfield. Jurgen Klopp's been banging on about it as much as possible. I think they'll try and get goals. If they're behind in the game, it won't be like, well, they will go for it. I think it's a key game for them, so could be goals.
I think 2-2 as well, and you know what? I don't think either team will be massively disappointed with that.
Okay, guys, let us know. What are you thinking? Is either of these teams going to win, or are you thinking the same as us? Is everyone going to draw? Let us know in the comments below.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube, and for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app, and for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.